As anyone who regularly buys Preparation H will tell you, forcing things is usually not a good idea. And as a lot of writers will tell you, sometimes the writing just doesn't come easily. Sometimes there are times when motivation and ideas are stuck and showing no sign of returning. Writing will get difficult at some point, and the question is, what should you do at that point? Should you force yourself to keep going, or should you wait it out and come back when the motivation and inspiration return? That's what we're going to be exploring today, as there are some good arguments on both sides. Every writer grapples with times when motivation and inspiration strike and the writing flows easily, and times where you are discouraged, blocked, and unmotivated and the writing gets a lot harder. For a lot of people, the times of writer's block and difficulty far outnumber the times where the writing flows easily. All kinds of things contribute to making writing difficult. As you work through a longer project like a novel, the novelty of your story and possibly the process in general will start to wear away. Spend enough time with even an exciting idea and you'll start to find it familiar and boring. This is almost a universal experience, and it's why so many people have written the first 10 pages of a novel but will likely never touch page 11. Writing is also notorious for having a lack of rewards. You can work for years and years and not see any fame or money or prestige or any sort of readership. You can pour your heart and soul into a story only to see it be ripped apart by your critique partners or rejected by agents, or see it fail to gain a substantial readership. Sure, you can always see progress as you work through a novel. Your word count will progressively go up as you work on it. But when things get difficult, you tend to write slower, which means that the progress can grind to a halt, which is demotivating in its own way. Given all this, it's a wonder that all writers aren't antisocial, depressed alcoholics who have completely given up on life. Oh, wait. So when writing gets difficult, should you force yourself to keep going? Should you force yourself to write even when forcing yourself to write feels really bad? The answer, at least in my opinion, is that you should absolutely force yourself to write when you don't feel like it. Or said a better way, you should learn to force yourself to write when things get difficult, while doing as little damage to the process as you can. There is some merit to the idea of not forcing it when things aren't coming easily, and we'll talk about that a bit later on, but there's an underlying process that happens here when you force yourself to work when things are difficult, and that is really important. Here's the thing. The hard writing days are what buy you the easy writing days. Excelling at anything means learning to do that thing under less than perfect circumstances. Writing is no different. The fact is, bad circumstances will find you no matter what, and a lot of your writing time is going to be during these bad times. The people who accomplish things are the ones who can make use of these bad times, the ones who can get work done even during difficult circumstances, the people who fight for progress even though the amount of progress you're making relative to the effort you're expending is way lower. Working through the difficulties associated with any task is a skill, and you only develop that skill when you face those difficulties. You only learn to sail on rough seas when the seas are rough. Working through hard writing days gives you the skill that will make other days easier. Yes, if both your hands are broken or your laptop melts or you fall into a coma, then yes, that's an external circumstance that hinders your writing. But let's be honest, most people who quit writing do so because of internal things, not external things. You quit because you've lost motivation. You quit because you didn't immediately get a book deal. You quit because your critique partners didn't collapse foaming at the mouth upon witnessing your literary brilliance and had the gall to point out some flaws in your writing. Your desire to write can go away because of the thoughts that you have, or that the thoughts that you have in response to circumstances. The time, capability, and energy to write can still be there. That is the critical part. Most people who give up on writing a novel are still fully capable of writing that novel. They don't give up because of external reasons, they give up because of internal ones. But that internal motivation does have a purpose, and it's not something that we can completely ignore. Fiction writing is different from a lot of work that people do. I think most art kind of falls into the same category. But having internal motivation and being emotionally engaged with the work is more important for fiction writing than it is for other sorts of work that you may be doing. You can probably code a database management system or lay down a brick wall without being emotionally invested in the process, and the result will still be good. I'm not sure that writing a novel works the same way. There's that old saying, no tears in the writer, no tears in the reader. There is an importance to being emotionally invested in your work. What this could mean is that if you force yourself to write when you aren't emotionally invested in writing, then your writing might lack that emotional engagement. You won't be writing with the same passion as when you're motivated, and a story written without passion will probably lack passion, and that will be apparent in the finished work. This is why I think this goes beyond just mechanically forcing yourself to write. You also need to develop the ability to cultivate passion for your story. You need to learn not only just how to force yourself to write, but how to get into the headspace to put energy and passion into your writing. It's not just enough to sit down and crank out the words. You have to be in the right headspace to crank out words in a way that will lead to at least passable writing. Now, doing this is very, very difficult, but there are a few things I've found through my own experience with these issues that can help with this. First one, I think, is just time and experience. The more time you've been writing, I think the easier this gets. Having strong habits around writing, having a good writing routine means there's less mental blockages around actually writing, which could let the passion flow a little bit more easily. I think a lot of times it's not necessarily that the motivation and the passion aren't there. I think it's that they get blocked by other things like stress about writing or wondering when you're going to do it, or if writing is new to you, just the discomfort and unfamiliarity of sitting down to write. Once you have a lot of experience, once you have some solid habits around your writing, those negative things will go away and the passion and the interest and the motivation will be able to come out a little bit easier. Second thing I think is really knowing yourself as a writer. This takes a lot of time and a lot of reflection and a lot of thought. What really inspires you? What draws you to a project? Why are you writing this story? If you are struggling to get motivated, part of that can be that you're working on something that really doesn't excite you on a deep level. That's different from just jumping around between different exciting projects, though. I think any writer needs to understand what it is that interests them in a particular story, why they want to write that story, and what motivates them to write that story on a deep level. Another part of this, I think, is recognizing that you probably kind of write at the same level every day, regardless of how you feel. We often think that if you feel super motivated and excited to write, you'll write better than the days where you kind of have to force yourself to get going. But I don't know that that's necessarily true. This is really hard to measure, and I'm only going off of my own experience here. But I've written scenes that feel like complete garbage when I was writing them, and scenes that felt amazing when I was writing them and I was super motivated to write them. And I think a lot of the time, if you could objectively compare the quality of the writing, they would probably be about the same. There is probably some variability. Some of what you write will be bad. Some of it will be really good. But I don't know that that's necessarily 100% correlated with how you feel about the writing. I think that most of the time, the writing you produce is probably just average for you. Like it's a normal sort of representation of where your skill is at. But if you're feeling bad about the process, you'll think that it's below average. And if you're feeling really good about the process, you may think that it's above average. I think that sort of strengthens the argument to force yourself to write, because most of the writing you do will probably, by definition, be of average quality for you and where your skill is. Really, what's happening is depending on your mood on that given day, you feel better or worse about the writing, but that's just because of your mood, not necessarily the objective quality of the writing, which, as I said, is sort of difficult to measure, but here we are. Speaking of difficult things to measure, the conclusion of this video is difficult to measure because I didn't really write one. I probably should have forced myself to write one given everything that we've talked about in this video. Anyway, so there you have it. I'd love to hear what you think about this in the comments down below. If you want to see more stuff like this, you can check out all my other writing advice related videos and subscribe to my channel. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.